If you root for one of the best football teams in America, obviously the college football playoff is the goal, and you hold out hope in a physical game like football that it's not going to be that next play that's going to take your best player or your quarterback off the field for meaningful games or for the rest of the season. Also, that the NCAA doesn't come knocking, as is the case with one Chase Young, Heisman Trophy contender, and considered largely the best defensive player in the country. We're going to dive into this story with Patrick Murphy. You can join him on bucknuts.com. That's the 247 sports platform for Ohio State football. Pat, how you doing today?
Good. A little tired. Woke up a little earlier than I expected, but it is what it is, and we roll with it.
Yeah, so we know that Chase Young certainly tweeted out his generic take on what happened, what the situation is, that he expects to get on the field, that the NCAA is looking into the issue, that he received a loan from a quote-unquote family friend, and again, that they're going to try to clean up things as much as possible. What else can we take from the other information that's been gathered?
Well, I think a lot of what Chase said was helpful to put out there. I don't know if that was him acting on his own. I would assume Ohio State was probably involved, at least run it by him, but I don't know that for sure. But it confirmed a lot of what we'd heard as this story kind of rolled out last night, this morning, really broke this morning. He accepted money. It was a loan. It's been paid back. It was not to an agent, which is something that we heard this morning, and other people have confirmed since then, some national guys and whatnot. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens from here. There's precedent, set by other players that have been in similar situations. Ohio State fans will remember Troy Smith back in, I believe it was 2005, missed the bowl game and then the first game of the 2006 season because of a similar situation. Other players around the NCAA more recently, and it tends to be a game or two from everything I've found. Now that doesn't mean that's what they'll do here. Each situation is handled independently. The NCAA doesn't act on any very specific guidelines, so it's not like we can point and say, hey, that you did this, this, and this, and that results in this punishment. It judges every case separately. So I would imagine, Chase gets a game or two. He'll obviously get at least the Maryland game. Ohio State has already ruled him out for that game. They did so this morning, but it's tough to say what the NCAA will do ultimately. I think from an Ohio State perspective, you want to get out ahead of this, and you take him out of the game, you rule him ineligible. It's a little bit easier to do when you're going up against a Maryland team that you're 40-point favorites against for sure. But the alternative, and we've seen this before in college football, would have been to play him. Auburn did that with Cam Newton, Texas A&M with Johnny Manziel. Neither of those players or the schools got in trouble after the fact. So, you can take that risk, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Ohio State has elected not to play that game, which tends to be the way Ohio State goes about things, usually erring on the side of caution rather than daring the NCAA, so to speak. So, this is the situation they're in. You're going to miss Chase Young for at least one game. He is, arguably the best player in college football. A lot of Heisman Trophy talk since we saw him last against Wisconsin and the 4-sack, 5 tackle for a loss performance. He's half a sack away from the Ohio State record, not far off from the national record. I mean, we can go on and on about how good this guy is. He's, potentially the number 1 draft pick next year in the NFL draft, assuming he elects to go pro, which we all believe he will. So, you can't sugarcoat this as not a big deal for Ohio State. He's their best player, and he's made this defense, not single-handedly, but a large part of it, one of the best defenses in the country. And I think if you want to look on the bright side and stay positive about this, defensive end is a very deep position for Ohio State. They've recruited it well. They've developed well with Larry Johnson as the defensive line coach. And, they will be without Jonathan Cooper, a senior defensive end, the other starter. He's been out for most of the season, played in 2 games with a high ankle, and, came back and then missed last week's game. So he'll be out for this game too. So they're really down 2 defensive ends. But they've got a number of other guys that can step in. Tyreek Smith, who's played well both this season and last season, a sophomore. Highly recruited freshman Zach Harrison, who's from Columbus and has played quite a bit this year. Javante Jean-Baptiste, Tyler Friday. These are, guys that were listed on their depth chart today in replacement of Young and Cooper. So they have guys. None of them are Chase Young, but maybe the collection of them will be bigger than the sum of their parts, as they say, and you can, make this work. Another positive, as I mentioned, they play Maryland this week, Rutgers next week. So if Chase Young is suspended longer than a game or 2 games, you have 3 weeks to prepare what you're going to do at the defensive end spot and get guys ready before you get back into the ranked game, so to speak, against Penn State and Michigan to close out the regular season. All in all, it's an unfortunate circumstance. This was a thing that happened last year. It's something that I don't think Ohio State was even aware of, from my understanding, until recently. So, it's unfortunate. This program has kept itself very clean in the 9 months under Ryan Day, and obviously done well in the field. So it's hard to picture something like this derailing a season before it happens, but you've got to figure out a way to kind of roll with it when it does happen. And, that's going to be Ohio State's task tomorrow and going forward, and until we find out how long Chase is going to be out.
So it's my understanding, Pat, that this loan came sometime before Chase ever stepped on the field for Ohio State, but it was after he would have signed his letter of intent, so he was a member of the football team.
Well, the loan came last year. The friend was someone he met prior to coming to Ohio State, is what he said. And that does look a little weird, I'm going to be honest. Now, the fact that we've heard it's not an agent, I think, is a good thing. But, obviously he was a 5-star kid coming out of Maryland. Committing to a place like Ohio State for a guy like that, you never know what kind of people are trying to get in with someone early. Hopefully, this is someone that the family knows well, that they can prove, and they will have to prove. This is not someone who was just trying to get in with him before he makes it big, and benefit off of him, and promise him, hey, you can get this money now and pay me back later, type of thing. The NCAA is very weird about these rules. If you an example I heard used on the radio today locally was from a former player. If your uncle comes to take you out to dinner, you still have to sign a form and explain who that person is. So anyone giving money is always questionable, or what could be perceived as improper benefits. But yes, it was sometime in 2018. Chase says he paid it back in full last summer. So, if that is all proven, and they can prove that it's a family friend, and like I said, not somebody that would be trying to give him improper benefits for, to be an agent or whatever afterwards, and that he paid it all back, I see no reason why Chase can't be back on the field in a week or two. But again, I'm not the NCAA, and we've seen unpredictable things happen from some of their rulings, or not rulings. So, we just have to wait and see on this one, frankly.
If Chase Young misses a game or 2, it doesn't seem to hurt again, because of the competition on the field. From a team standpoint, from an individual standpoint, he misses a couple sacks, a couple tackles for loss, maybe a big play or 2. Maybe that hurts his Heisman candidacy in regards to just sheer numbers that people want to see on a stat sheet and evaluate a player that's got 17 sacks different than a player with 18.5 sacks. It seems a little ridiculous, but that could be a factor for some people, or just the sheer fact that, this kid, I was going to consider him, but I don't like how this looks. And there is some terminology in the Heisman letter of the law, just in regards to the conduct off the field. So I'm just going to dismiss him and not even deal with him. So it could hurt the Heisman candidacy from those 2 standpoints. On the positive aspect, as you mentioned, they're stocked along the defensive front. They get time to prepare. If they're going to miss him for Penn State, they keep him healthy for 1 to 2 other games. There's no chance of him getting hurt on the football field during that time. And he's going to be fresh and ready to go, which obviously he gets rotated in and out. That's not a big concern as well. But Chase Young going to miss the Maryland game coming up at the Shoe on Saturday.